Let's talk about school leadership stress and well-being. Okay, first and foremost, because I'm focusing on school leadership stress and well-being doesn't mean I don't care about teachers or students. I've written blogs for Finding Common Ground for Education Week on all of those topics. But recently I've read a lot of surveys around school leaders, and school leaders actually, some of them wear their stress like a badge of honor. And they also say that if they talk about stress too much, that they're going to feel weak. So what I'd like to try to do in this video is actually talk about 3 S's. Number 1 is going to be statistics. We're going to look at some pre-COVID surveys and some surveys that have been done during COVID, including one that I've been doing recently. The second S is going to be science, because I think we need some real talk about stress, anxiety, and our well-being, and what it does to our body. Number 3 is actually going to be where we talk about strategies. What are some strategies that we can put into place today and commit to? And I'm not talking about just for your friends. I'm talking for you at the end of the video. Now, if you like the video, please give it a like at the end. And if you would like, please consider following, because I post videos under the umbrella of education on a variety of topics. So let's get started with some statistics, and we'll look at pre-COVID. You know, the Australian Principal Occupational Health, Safety, and Well-Being study actually showed that 1 in 3 principals are in serious distress, and also 1 in 3 principals have actually been exposed to physical violence. Now, there are other studies that have been done years ago. Queen and Schumacher for Principal Magazine for NAESP actually found that as many as 75% of principals experience stress-related symptoms that include things like fatigue and weakness. And there are a plethora of other studies that actually show that not only do school leaders feel this stress, but they don't feel like they're going to get support from their district office, or they don't feel like they're given the proper resources to be able to deal with it. So let's talk about some surveys and statistics that are happening during COVID. Number 1 is from the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. They studied over 1,000 school principals in New York City over a 2-week period. Now, New York City, remember, was the hotbed of the coronavirus at the very beginning. And they've had to make a lot of changes. They're the largest school district in the United States. Leaders were actually asked to share 3 emotions that they had experienced in those 2 weeks. And 95% of the school leaders shared an emotion that was actually seen by the researchers as negative. Probably not a surprise. But the emotion that they shared the most, the one that they actually highlighted the most, leaders said that they were feeling anxious. They were feeling a lot of anxiety. Now, I've done a survey of school leaders. And when I'm talking school leaders, I'm talking instructional coaches, department chairs, building leaders, and central office staff as well, even superintendents. And in the study so far, what I found is that 89% of the respondents stated that they have experienced an increase in stress over the last 7 months. Also, probably not a huge surprise, because we've all felt it. But what was interesting about the study, and not just because it's my study, is that 45% of the same respondents were asked, 100% of the respondents were asked, but 45% of the respondents actually stated that pre-COVID, they were not feeling an increase in stress. And I wonder if, before March, if they were asked if they were experiencing stress, if they would have answered differently, or if the coronavirus, COVID-19, actually provided them with a little bit of hindsight, being 2020, that they thought they were stressed, but over the past 7 months, there's been a whole new level of stress. So I think it's important also that during the survey that I've been doing with school leaders, when asked if self-care was important, 95% of the respondents said that self-care is indeed very important because it contributes to our well-being. It actually helps alleviate stress. But as you can see from this screen, when I asked if they practice self-care several times a week, the answers changed entirely. So what we're finding in the surveys that I'm doing is that talking about stress, talking about well-being, talking about things like self-care, really important and really easy to do. But actually doing something about it is completely different. When leaders were asked why they don't like to talk about stress, they actually gave a variety of answers. Some of them said, well, we wear it like a badge of honor because we're supposed to be stressed. It's a part of the job. And I understand that. It is a part of the job for sure, especially during COVID. But just because it's a part of the job doesn't mean we have to live and breathe it 24/7. We can do something about it. Some of them actually said that they're afraid that they're going to look weak. That answer came up a lot. And that right there is a piece of leadership that I think we need to be able to talk about even more. Because just because you talk about being stressed doesn't mean it makes you look weak. In fact, the strength is when you talk about stress and the stress you're feeling and the stress everybody else is feeling, and actually start to do something about it within your own school community, within your faculty meetings and PLCs. And sadly enough, some of the leaders actually said that they don't talk about their own stress. They talk about stress of staff, but they don't talk about their own stress because they're afraid of being judged. And that is the negative side of school leadership. So let's talk a little bit about the science, because I feel like we need some real talk here, because so many school leaders are worried about being judged, or they wear it like a badge of honor, or they think it's a part of the job. But let's talk about the science, because maybe that will help us take this a little bit more seriously. In fact, a Harvard medical study shows that stress affects not only the memory and many other brain functions like mood and anxiety, but it also promotes inflammation, which can adversely affect the heart health. So what we know by this Harvard study and many other studies that probably show the same things is that not only does stress affect your body in a negative way, but it also is going to impact negatively your relationships, because you're going to be a little bit more short-tempered and you're not going to have the patience that maybe you normally have during non-stressful times. That's not good, because this means that not only are you stressed at work, but you're taken at home and it never leaves you. And I think what we also need to be able to do is, for those school leaders that say they wear it like a badge of honor, or they're afraid to talk about their own level of stress because it's going to make them look weak or they're going to be judged, I think that's wrong. Because I think what we need to be able to do is we do need to be able to articulate. We need to be able to talk about our level of stress and anxiety that we are feeling. And we don't have to do it in a way that is going to make us look weak, but we can definitely do it in a way that helps us clarify whether it's stress we're feeling or depression. Because there's some research that shows that there's a very big difference between stress and depression. And by talking about it, you'll be able to clarify which one you're experiencing, and how you deal with those might look two different ways. What we also know is that focusing on mental health is actually going to help us feel more connected. All experiencing stress. Nobody is leaving this unscathed. So being able to talk about it and alleviate it through finding different strategies will help us become more connected. So let's talk about strategies. Strategies are really important, and think about one that you can start to gravitate to. Number one is exercise. We know that exercise helps us breathe better. It helps us get into shape. It helps create a more positive lifestyle for ourselves. There are things like I joined the Peloton group because I bought a Peloton that I received a few weeks ago, and I never thought it would be one for stationary equipment, but being a part of that community and connected feels really good. I actually find myself looking forward to it and exercising for longer, or they like to call it training for longer. One of the things that I started to utilize a couple of years ago, about 2.5 years ago, is that of mindfulness and meditation. I'll admit at first when I was doing it, I felt like I was doing it wrong, but then I realized that there is no doing it wrong. And I started to download an app and do it. And now I do it from 10 to 30 minutes, depending on the day and how much time I have. And what I found is that 10 minutes, even if it was 5 minutes, actually bled into the rest of my day. It actually helped me step back and be proactive as opposed to reactive. It helped me think about decisions instead of making rash ones that I might regret in the future. Meditation and mindfulness, there have been lots of benefits and lots of research to show the benefits, is a great strategy to contribute to a better well-being and also alleviate some stress and anxiety. Some people were talking in my surveys about how they connect with family and friends. I know that this is something that I've also done because I used to be on the road 45 to 47 weeks a year pre-COVID. We also found that through the survey, people were talking about how they were no longer, or they took a break from reading professional literature. We know that as educators, we spend a lot of money on books, and that's a great thing. I'm an author, so I appreciate that. But the reality is, we have a pile of books on the side of our desk, and that almost contributes to our stress too. It's like, oh, I've got to read that, or oh, I should be reading that chapter. So people said that they like reading non-professional literature because it helps an escape, and it helps them take away. And some people talked about disconnecting. They set time limits on on what times they check email, which is always a good one. It's also taken a disconnect from social media, because I think sometimes social media contributes to our stress, because let's face it, we compare ourselves to others. They have more followers, or they're doing something that gets more likes, or they're doing something that we feel we're supposed to be doing in our own practice, and maybe we're not. So disconnecting from social media, I've recently started to take some apps off my phone, because it's amazing how much we sit there and just grab our phone and look at Instagram or look at Facebook or look at Twitter. And sometimes that's not such a bad thing because it can inspire us, but when we're checking it all the time, it can actually contribute to our anxiety, and it can actually make us feel more disconnected than connected. Now, at the beginning of this video, I said that I was going to challenge you because it's so easy. Some people will watch it and say, I'm going to show my friend because they have to do something. This is about you. I want to challenge you to find one strategy that's going to help you become more connected to people and help you create a better well-being and help alleviate some stress and anxiety. I want to thank you very much for your time, and I hope that you find a great way to be able to alleviate that stress you might be feeling.